badass business owners, welcome back to the show. Today I want to talk about ROI, otherwise known as return on investment. So what is ROI, or what is return on investment? Well, it's just like it sounds. It says if you invest X, you will get Y. Basically, if I spend a certain amount of money, what should I be able to expect as a return on that investment? ROI is very important to your business because anytime that you spend money, you want to get some type of return. Sometimes that return isn't necessarily financial, but it is something that you're looking to gain out of why you're spending that money. Every dollar you spend in your business should have a purpose, and you want to know what that purpose is. You also want to make sure that you know that if you're going to spend a certain amount of money, what are you expecting in return? This way you have something to measure it against. If you're just spending money willy-nilly and not knowing what kind of return you're supposed to get out of it, you're just kind of like throwing money into the wind, hoping something's going to stick. And what I'm challenging you to do is say, hey, if I'm going to spend a certain amount of money, I hope to get something in return. So let's take, for example, if you decide that you're going to go out and you're going to buy some software program. Many of you use some type of software program for your business that specializes in what it is that you do. And the reason that you do it is you're like, hey, I'm going to go spend this $80 a month, $300 a month, whatever it is you spend on your program. The reason you did it is because you go, wow, the return I'm going to get is going to be one of financial peace, meaning or mental peace in some cases, because it organizes it for you, right? It allows you to write your scheduling in it. It allows you to do your invoicing in it. And it makes it so simple because it's targeted towards your specific type of business. Maybe you have a plumbing business and it focuses on that. Or maybe you have a dog grooming business and it focuses on that. Maybe you have any type of business, but the pool business, they focus on helping you run your business better, and they do all these fancy things. Not everybody uses everything in those fancy things, but it's supposed to help you out. Your return on that investment is supposed to save you time, money. And what you're hoping is you're going to be able to get paid faster, be able to organize faster. So it's not necessarily a 100% financial gain, although there is some to that. It's more of to gain back your time and all the energy of running around trying to do all these different things separately where everything is done in the program. So that's one type of return on investment. But for many of you, there's like also a calculator type thing to it. Now, you know me, I hate giving you guys math problems. We are going to go over one today if you want to go that far, but I think overall you can get the basic concept of ROI, return on investment, and do it very quickly in your head to where it's very minimal math, but at least you'll know that if I spend $500 and I make $1,000, then I had a return of I doubled my money, right? So let's kind of talk about that for a second. Now, but before we do, remember I was telling you, sometimes we make money, sometimes we don't make money. Sometimes our return is something different. We discussed the first version of it, which is like the software programs that you buy for your business. Another type that might be is, I'm sure some of you, or if not most of you, at some point in time have thought about or did sponsor a team. Maybe it's your local soccer team, a football team, dance club, whatever it is, and you gave them $100. Now, are you really expecting to make money off of that $100? Honestly, if somebody's sitting in the stands, are they really going, oh, look, this plumbing company, I really should call them? No, they're probably not. But what you're doing is you're doing a couple different things. One, you're planting a seed, right? So there's some advertising, some money that you spend that is more about seed planting, getting your name out there, name recognition. That is the return on that investment that you're hoping to get. It's not necessarily that it's going to run, 300 people through the doors of my business just because of that advertising, but it's more of getting your name out there, getting some recognition. It also feels good. I mean, let's face it, when we sponsor one of the local teams, it feels good to be able to support them and whatnot. And it feels good to us as well. And that's part of that ROI that we get. So there are certain things that you're going to spend money on that really isn't going to turn into more money. But what we care about is how do we make sure that if I go spend $500 on some advertising, or I go out and I buy $500 of equipment, that this is the kind of return I expect and hope to get out of that. Now, last week, if you didn't already, make sure you watch that video. We talked about figuring out your break-even point, and that has to do with the fact that if you spend $500, at what point do you get your $500 back? Because it's not a $500 sale goes back to the $500. As you recall, it's based off of profits because every sale you do, you still have to pay the bills. You still have to pay your costs, your labor, and all that other good stuff. So for example, it might be you have to 5 times your money just to break even. So in today's video, as far as ROI, we're talking about above and beyond that, because a lot of times we want to make more money than what it is that we put into it. So we're not here just to break even. We're here to grow the business. So if I need to do 5 sales to be able to pay it back, what's my goal? Is my goal to get 10 sales, 15 sales, 20 sales, whatever the case may be? What kind of ROI am I trying to get? This way, it's going to help you a little bit more. So let's take an example of ROI, and we're going to walk through the different pieces of what it is to help you understand. So let's just say that you have a product that you want to sell, and you have that product. It costs you $500 in cost of goods. Okay, remember, cost of goods are the materials, the ingredients, the parts, all of that stuff, plus any labor that's associated to it to make or provide the product or service. So once again, if I sell bicycles and I just have a bicycle, there's no labor involved. It's an already made bicycle. My cost is just the cost of the bicycle. But if I have the bicycle pieces and I have to assemble the bicycle before I can sell it, now I have to put labor into it, right? Same thing with candles. You can pick anything else that's out there. So what we're looking at first and foremost when we're looking at our return on our investment is we want to look at what are the costs associated with that. This is the most easiest way to understand what this is, right? We do know that we have to deal with the other expenses that are associated with this. We'll talk about that later. For right now, what we want to care about is if we spend $500 and we turn around and we make $2,300, what does that mean? What's our ROI on that? So let's put break even aside. Let's put all that aside. Let's just basically understand what basic ROI is. I spend $500 and I make $2,300. How much was my return on that investment? Well, the return on that investment is going to be the difference. If I made $2,300, but I spent $500 to make the 23, then my return on that investment is $1,800. 2,300 minus 500 is 1,800. Once again, basic math, plus, minus, times, and division. That's all we ever play with on this channel, right? Because we want to help you out. So 2,300 minus the 500, my return on that investment is $1,800. Now, sometimes people will use other ways of expressing that number. So there's the dollar version, which is what we just did, which is the 1,800. But how much did I make on that? I mean, what's the times, right? So if we take that 1,800 and we divide it by the $500 that we spent, we see that that comes out to, hang on a sec, I got a little cheat sheet here because I don't memorize that many things. So 1,800 divided by the 500 tells us it's 3.6. That tells us we made 3.6 times our money. So we spent 500 and we made 3.6 times. Now, some people do it by percentages. And the best way to get the percentage is to take the 3.6 times 100. And if we take the 3.6 times 100, it means that we made 360% on our money. But you and I know we still had other costs associated with those sales. We want to keep that in mind because at the same time, it's going to really tell you what your true return on that money is. Because a lot of times we get so hung up when it comes to the dollar amount. But I'm not going to go through all of that. That's where you're going to go back and you're going to look at the break-even point. So that way you can learn how to figure that out. But today, I just really want you to understand the concept of return on your ROI, your return on your investment. Because you can use this in a lot of different things. We're talking business here, but there's people that use it on stocks. They use it on their house. If they put in $25,000 into buying a house and then they go to sell it, and at the end of the day, they make $100,000. That's how much equity they have after they pay everything. They walk away with a check for $100,000. Well, their return on their investment is going to be the 25 that they originally put in, the 100,000 minus that 25, means it's $75,000, which means that they basically 3 times their money, right? 25 grew to the 75, and that's their return. There are no other costs and other thing else because we already took that off. So the reason I'm not doing the after your other expenses and everything else is because I want you to just understand the basic concept of return on investment, because the return on investment is just, I spent this amount of money, I made this amount of money. It comes to you to figure out, going, after I remove all of my costs, other costs that are associated with those sales, what did I truly make? Because yes, in our example earlier, we made $1,800, But we may have had $1,000 worth of other expenses that had to come out of there, in which case we spent $500 and we really made $800. And I'm not trying to make this complicated. I'm trying to help keep this as simple as I can for you to just understand the concept. Return on investment. I spent X amount of money. I made X amount of money. If I go out and I spend $500 on an advertising and I run a special and I got, 20 people to use that special, then I just take 20 times whatever it was I was selling it for. And that tells me how much money I made. And then I subtract the 500 and that tells me what my return on my investment was, right? I spent $500 and I got, 2,500 in new sales. So really it's saying I spent 500 and I got 2,500 new in sales. Then you turn around and you would walk through how much other money that you spent out of that money because you had other costs and expenses and everything else. So it can tell you what your true number is. So really you need ROI with what we talked about last week as far as break even, because now you're going to be able to really find out that, this 500 led to 2,500 in sales, but the reality is I only made $500. So my true, quote unquote, true ROI wasn't the original 2,500. It really was, I spent 500 to make 500, and I made 100% more money because I've already taken it out, right? Remember the 2,300 became 18 and then I took out my other costs and left me 500. So it's kind of weird that I used those two numbers because it made it really confusing for you. Sorry about that. So let's just go back. Return on investment. I spent X amount of money. I made X amount of money. That's my return. So if I spend $100 and I make $1,000, my return is the $1,000 minus the $100, which means my return on my investment was $900. Okay, so that's basically what you're looking at when you're doing the most simple version of what return on investment is. But if you want to know the true return, that's where you're going to back out the other costs of those sales so you can get down to what that profit is. So let's do some quick math here, okay? I'm going to pull out my phone here because I don't know the answer to this because it just popped into my head. Is if I spent $100 and I made $1,000, right? So on that $1,000, let's just say that my profit margin is 25%. My profit typically is. So that means out of that $1,000, I get to keep profit 25% of it. So we take the $1,000 times the 25%, so 0.25. That means I made $250. So now that $100 made profit of $250. So that return on my investment is much different. My initial return on the investment of the $100 to sales was $900, right? $100 spent, $900 in sales. So it was a $900 return on the investment. But if I look at from a profit standpoint, and my profit is 25%, 25% of the $1,000 I made was $250. So now the $100 that I initially spent ended up in my pocket at $250, which means I made $250 minus that 100, which means I really made $150 now that I think about that. It can get really confusing, and it's much easier, by the way, if you do this on paper, because you can kind of see it and walk it through and just kind of say, okay, I spent this, I had these sales, I had these costs associated with those sales. It left me at the end of the day this amount of money. This amount of money minus the initial amount of money that I made is what my actual return was. So I'm throwing out a lot of different things here because I just want you to look at return on investment a lot of different ways, because it's just going to help you get a better gauge on, are you spending smart money? Because we want to make money on the money that we're doing. Our goal is not to spend money just to break even. So it's important that you look at it a lot of different ways, because one is, did it get butts in? Because sometimes, once again, maybe you don't care that you didn't make a lot of money because the goal was to get people to use your business, to come in, to taste your product, to test it out. I mean, if you have a bakery, for example, and it gets new customers in, your goal might be, hey, I'm going to break even, but my goal is the fact that they're going to come back because they're going to fall in love with my product because they tasted it, they liked it, now they're going to come back. So it's a long-term game, not necessarily the short-term game. For example, when I had my ice cream shop, we would do these dollar scoop nights. I lost so much money every time we did one of those every Tuesday, but the goal was they liked it so much they came back again, and that's where I was going to make the money. So every business has a different way of doing it. So sometimes that return isn't immediate return, but long-term. So you just got to ask yourself, when I'm spending the money, what's the plan? What's the goal? What is my return that I'm looking for? Is it monetary? Is it repeat business? Is it for people to fall in love with my business, to see I'm a good philanthropist, that I support my local community. What is that return on that investment? What am I trying to get out of that money? A lot of stuff we threw at you. Hopefully I kept it as simple as possible because that's what our goal is. I just want you to understand the concept of return on investment. Hopefully you've got a better idea of it. And when you're walking away, you're going to be able to start looking at the money you spend and saying, what is the return that I'm trying to get out of this? And am I hitting my goals? So you have something to measure it against. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'll talk to you next week. Bye for now.